Liliana Bakhtiari has 2 partners, and the 3 of them plan to build a family together. The 34-year-old, who uses they and she pronouns, has been with their partner Kris Brown, 33, for 10 years. The American couple kept quiet about what they have both described as one of the best parts of their lives. They are non-monogamous, meaning they prefer to date and form relationships with more than one person. For more human interest-related news and videos, check out Human Interest. They have been in a relationship with a third person, Sarah Al-Khail, over the past 2 years. "We're openly showing it and proud of it," Liliana tells NBC News in an exclusive interview, with Kris and Sarah sat on either side. "It should be destigmatized. It's a very valid familial structure that people should embrace." Liliana, who's the first queer Muslim person elected in the state of Georgia and the first non-binary council member of a major U.S. city, said they have known for a long time that monogamy isn't for them. Prior to meeting Kris, Liliana was doing international crisis relief work that required a lot of travel, saying it was easier to have short connections that turned into friendships. Meeting old-fashioned way. Liliana, who's an Atlanta City Council member, met Kris in Atlanta in 2012 the old-fashioned way, at a gay bar. When the two started dating, Liliana said they were upfront with Kris that they are non-monogamous. "I was like, that's cool with me," said Kris, who was previously a professional dancer and now works in political campaign management and fundraising. "It was the first time that I had been with anyone who didn't want to be monogamous. For me, it was kind of a relief as well to be like, okay, I don't have to be this person's everything all the time. I can be as much of their life as works for us, and we can have this fluidity, and I really like the feeling of that." Liliana said their relationship with Kris was the first serious relationship they had, and they were coming into it at a difficult time in their life. "I grew up in an overbearing household that didn't allow for a lot of independence to happen," Liliana said, adding that they left home at 18. But they didn't have adult skills, so they experienced homelessness on and off for the next 5 years, living on friends' couches and out of their car. "I was assaulted a lot during that time," Liliana said. "I was mugged during that time. I was very rough. So I met Kris, and there was a lot of trauma, and this was the first person that I ever felt safe with." Their friends and community members saw how positively the relationship affected Liliana, they said, and it became publicly romanticized. "Carrying shame, but," Liliana said, "that meant when people would find out that we were open or non-monogamous, it was like someone destroyed a fairy tale for them." As a result, Liliana said they carried a lot of shame about being non-monogamous. "I was feeling I was a terrible partner, that Kris was only doing this for me, that I was keeping them home while I went out to have my cake and eat it, too, all of these things that were very untrue," they said. How Liliana met Sarah. In the fall of 2020, Liliana met Sarah through a virtual non-monogamy support group. Sarah started practicing non-monogamy about 5 years ago when she began to explore her queerness, though she said she doesn't want to conflate being queer and being non-monogamous, because straight people can be non-monogamous. "For me, practicing non-monogamy is a part of this greater unlearning and deprogramming of societal conditioning," she said. "Non-monogamy for me doesn't have to be having multiple partners. It's also breaking down the platonic romantic binary and being able to have these relationships that kind of exist in that gray area." Shortly after meeting, the two went on a roller skating date and they have been dating ever since, Liliana said. About a month later, Sarah met Kris, and the 3 began dating. Around the same time, Liliana started their second run for a nonpartisan seat on the city council after they ran unsuccessfully in 2017. Making sacrifices for the sake of their professional future, Sarah said they all decided to only share the relationship with close friends and family. "There's absolutely some sacrifices you have to make being with someone who's in politics," Sarah said. "But they were clear that there would be a day where we could be out, and that was also important for me. I didn't want to be in a relationship where I was always going to have to be essentially in the closet." 6 months after the 3 began dating, Sarah moved in, but only after the 3 had attended couples therapy to plan and talk about boundaries. Kris said the 3 of them see non-monogamy as an umbrella term, and under it there are a variety of relationship styles that can be romantic and or sexual. One of the more well-known styles is polyamory, which means having more than one romantic partner, they explained. Kris said the three of them prefer the label non-monogamy over polyamory. "We enjoy the fluidity. There are many more ways to be non-monogamous than there are ways to be polyamorous, and we invite and enjoy the fluidity of the term non-monogamy," Kris said. In their situation, the three of them are in a relationship together and see each other as life partners, they said, though they did not specify further. Over the last 2 years, they've been enjoying and planning their lives together. They traveled to Mexico last year and went to Utah earlier this year. They are converting a school bus into a living and working space, and they plan to buy land at some point as part of their dream of starting a queer commune. Liliana said it's been difficult to hide the relationship from the world, in part because they and Kris live a very public life. People will ask where the other half is if Kris doesn't attend an event with Liliana, they said. But they wanted to come out on their terms. This is the sort of thing that a political opponent or someone who has some axe to grind might pick up on and twist around and turn into something negative, and we want to claim it up front, and say this is the best thing about our life, Kris said. Curiosity. Liliana said that when they tell people about their relationship, people often respond in two ways, with support and/or curiosity. Older adults have more often asked questions like, "Who do you love more? Do you all sleep together? What happens? What are the rules? Don't you have to choose?" Liliana said, laughing. Their families have also been supportive, Liliana said. For example, the three of them visited Kris's family for the holidays in 2020. Though they had only been dating a few months, Kris and Liliana wanted to make sure Sarah felt supported and included, especially since her father died that November, just a year after her mother died, in 2019. Traditionally, Kris's grandma Terry will knit a custom stocking for every family member with their name on it. "We wanted to make sure that Sarah had the perfect Christmas, and we didn't have to say anything to Grandma," Liliana said. On Christmas Day, there was a custom stocking with Sarah's name on it hanging on the fireplace, stuffed with presents. Offending people from the sidelines in addition to allowing them to live openly and address stigma, Kris said that they hope coming out will allow them to raise awareness of barriers that non-traditional families still face. For example, Kris was in the hospital this year, and only one person was allowed in the hospital room with them. "There's an opportunity for us to kind of shed light on that, and be like, hey, there are non-traditional families out there," Kris said. "We're going to grow our family, and we want those kids to also be able to navigate the world how they want to navigate the world." Liliana is likely the first elected official in the U.S. to come out as being in a non-monogamous relationship, according to the Victory Institute, which researches LGBTQ political representation and trains queer candidates running for office. Liliana's term doesn't end until January 2026, but they said they're prepared for their relationship to potentially affect their re-election if they run again. They focused their platform on addressing the need for affordable housing in Atlanta's backlog of infrastructure projects. Last month, after Georgia's ban on abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy took effect, they introduced a resolution to allocate $300,000 to a nonprofit that helps people access reproductive health care. The mayor signed the legislation after the city council passed it unanimously. "I'm in love with two wonderful people. If people don't want to re-elect me because I'm in love with two wonderful people and in a happy and healthy relationship that is possibly the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, then I'm good," they said. Ultimately, their goal is to continue doing international crisis relief work, which they said they don't have to do from an elected position. "Offending people from the sidelines. I'll just keep offending people from the sidelines," Liliana said, sarcastically. In the meantime, the three of them joke that they're very boring when they aren't attending political events or traveling. For example, they recently picked out paint colors for an accent wall, and they can typically be found hanging out with their 8 pets. Liliana and Kris had 3 cats and 1 dog, and when Sarah joined the family she brought her 2 cats. Then, when Sarah's parents died, they adopted their 2 cats. "For the record, I want more dogs," Liliana said. "And I never intended on having 7 cats." "None of us did," Sarah said, laughing. Kris chimed in, "Yeah.